welcome back to Territory Talk, the official podcast of the Florida Panthers, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. And well, we continue to set things up to preview the upcoming 2024 Stanley Cup final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. And we've had a good bit of time to get ourselves ready for this upcoming series. Doug Plagans, Jamison Olive here with you as always. And a pleasure to welcome in our special guest today from ABC and ESPN's NHL coverage, Emily Kaplan, kind enough to stop by here and take some time out for us. And Emily, as I mentioned, I saw you on Around the Horn last night. I was at a restaurant, so I couldn't hear the episode of Around the Horn, but I saw you on Around the Horn, and I said, she's coming on Territory Talk tomorrow. So it's great to be joined by you now.
No, I appreciate you, Doug and Jamison. And yeah, we did get a hockey topic on, so hopefully you saw some B-roll of the Panthers too. We were talking about the Stanley Cup final, and I think the lead-in was that pretty silly quote by Chris Knobloch comparing being in Stanley Cup final and having that experience to the Buffalo Bills and the stray that they caught. So I'm not sure how the Panthers felt about that, but I was like, oh, look, maybe there's one coach that's trying to keep up with the press conferences this series.
Well, Dolphins fans loved it, and we're Dolphins country, so that's good. It's a win down here.
It played well in a lot of AFC East markets, I'm sure. But Emily, diving right into this, when you mentioned the Panthers and getting ready for this upcoming Stanley Cup final, and you've had a chance to spend a lot of time around this Panthers team, I guess just looking at it first and foremost, what's impressed you the most, and maybe what are some things that you've picked up along the way here throughout this playoff run? As I mentioned, you've had a chance to spend a good bit of time around this team.
Yeah, and I feel really fortunate that Eastern Conference Final was awesome. I think the thing that stands out to me the most about the Florida Panthers is that they're a team with such a clear identity. If you look at when Bill Zito came in, he pretty much built this team from scratch. Like, he chose Paul Maurice as his coach, and they decided this specific style of play that they wanted, and then they found players and plucked them that could fit into them. Obviously we harped on the fact that only 3 players are drafted, the rest are coming through free agency and trades. And when I watch the Panthers play, it's just relentless. Their waves of attack, specifically on the forecheck, the fact that all of these guys don't shy away from battles. They love competition. They're super competitive guys. And that has brought a lot of physicality. That's brought a lot of intensity. And so the games that the Florida Panthers play are just awesome to watch. And I think we're going to have an electric Stanley Cup final because they're playing against another team that's peaking at the right time too.
And Emily, like Doug said, you spent a lot of time with us the last couple of years, just all the playoff coverage, and we're getting more national TV games, which is great. But outside of, the Barkovs and the Kachucks and the Bobs, the bright lights type players, the Panthers are such a deep team. They have so many great guys. We all have kind of our secret side favorites. Is there a guy you spent some time talking to in the last 2 years, or maybe just you like their play a lot on the Panthers that you really enjoy that's maybe not one of the top 3 guys?
Yeah. Well, Evan Rodriguez is a guy that I've known for a couple years now, just covering the playoffs. He's popped up in different locker rooms, and I always appreciate his perspective. I feel like he has found his voice with the Panthers, so to speak. Like, all of a sudden he found the team that's like, you value this type of play too. This is the play, like, way I want to play. Like, this is awesome. So I love watching Evan Rodriguez play. I love talking to him. And then I just feel like, maybe now, not for you guys, but from a national perspective, we sometimes forget Aaron Ekblad is the guy that has been here the longest and just had to withstand the most to get to this moment. And he's no longer like peak prime of his career, but he's still really good. And the fact that he went through everything he went through during last playoff run, which I think is the biggest difference between the Panthers right now and last year, it's just their health. Considering all that he went through, missing the start of the season, getting back up to speed and still being that steady guy. I just don't know if he's getting enough of national love as he should.
And Emily, in mentioning a little bit there about last year's run in relation to Aaron Ekblad, but just looking at it as a whole, you may have touched on this a little bit, but having seen this team play the last couple of years, you mentioned the evolution under Bill Zito and everything like that, but how does this version of the Panthers feel different than it did maybe a year ago? Health notwithstanding, but just in terms of the trajectory of the team and how they've gotten to this point.
Yeah, well, Paul Maurice said something to our broadcast team before Game 6 against the Rangers. And he basically said last year, every round and every game felt like an achievement because nobody believed that we could be there. And, they believed in themselves, but it was still like earned, like found money. And this year, he said that the post-game celebrations have just been far more muted. The biggest celebration they got in the locker room was when they gave the game puck to a guy that just became a father of twins, even though he had not appeared in a single Stanley Cup playoff game. That's just another indictment of indicative of how close this team is. But I think about just the expectations have changed. The standard has changed. It's now this culture of like, well, we should be here and we deserve to be here, rather than we're the plucky underdog that got in because of the last week of the season and we got the last seed. And oh my goodness, no one wanted us to beat the Boston Bruins, but here we are, that kind of vibe. So I just think the psyche has changed in that way. It's a far more confident group. And then just the style of play, I think, especially if you don't follow the Florida Panthers closely, you saw them in the regular season and last year just be this really physical group. And you're like, oh, they just take a lot of penalties. There's always scrums after the whistle. They're trying to get in the mix. And as I've watched them in the playoffs, they're so much more disciplined right now than I think they've ever been. And yes, they do get engaged, but they're drawing the other team to get engaged too, and drawing the other team to get off their game. And I think that there's a lot of focus within this Florida Panthers group where they don't need to do that, but they can, and they can beat you in all different ways. And I think that's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, Paul Maurice always says it seems like the world hasn't caught up to what the Panthers are doing in terms of discipline. They still think they're going to get 7 power plays a game, and he always says if you take out the games against the Senators when Brady and Matthew play, their penalty numbers aren't as bad either. Obviously, there's 150 in each of those games every time.
Reputations are sticky, like they're hard to shake.
Well, speaking of reputations, obviously each team has a reputation and a play style heading into the series. And when you get to the Stanley Cup final, you really can't say one team's going to overpower a team in one area. You're always looking for those little nuances, like maybe if they're a little bit better here than them and are a little bit better in this area, power play, PK, all those things. What in particular maybe you looking for in this series that could shift it one way or the other, either to Edmonton or Florida?
Start to do some Canadian media, and the question they keep asking is, well, look at all of the star players in the regular season that the Panthers have now knocked out of the playoffs. How are they going to handle Connor McDavid? And we all know, because we watch the Panthers, that Sasha Barkov is the best and he can shut them down, but they're not hardline matching. Like, I think that's the big misconception. It's not going to be like Barkov trailing McDavid every single shift. There's trust in the depth, and I think the entire team's style is what punishes those top players and wears them down by the third period. So I'm just curious how they look against the best player in the world. We've seen them knock out skill players before, but what's their strategy against him? How do they frustrate him? What creative ways does Connor McDavid have to get through that wave of Florida Panthers defense? Like, that game within the game is going to be the best for me.
Emily, as the playoffs go on, it seems like in the playoffs, I've talked to a lot of people about this, but the playoffs are where stars are born. It's where players' stock seems to rise the most. And you mentioned players that might have that responsibility, trying to slow down McDavid, Draisaitl, guys like that. How much is Gus Forsling coming up in conversations you have about the Panthers these days? Because we've had a chance to see him a lot. Obviously, we know what he's been all about since he came to the Panthers, but it seems like nationally and across the hockey world, he's finally getting a lot of that credit that he deserves. How much have you been asked about him? How much do you notice his name coming up in conversations as it pertains to the Panthers?
Huge. He is a breakout star of these playoffs, no doubt. I think people started to realize it this year, obviously. And then when he got that contract, if you weren't paying close attention, you're like, whoa, this guy is worth this much deal. Like, wasn't he on waivers a year ago? And, as you guys know, the story is just so compelling because when he was put on waivers, was like, this might be it for my NHL career. I might be going back to Sweden and whatever. Like I said, I did it. And the fact that he always believed in himself, had hard work and patience, but he still was so much an unknown going into these playoffs. I mean, I remember talking with Ray Ferraro, and I'm not throwing Ray under the bus with this anecdote. I'm fine sharing it. But we're talking about how all of the other players kept saying in the media, like, oh, he's just like a Greek god in the gym. He's an Adonis. And Ray's like, I can't tell if they're chirping him and he's not in shape at all, and this is just like a really big bit that the locker room has, or if he's actually really fit. As you guys know, he's actually just that fit, and that's part of his legend, what makes him so good. But every game, it feels like you notice him more and more. What he does defensively, the fact that he can pop in offensively now and have some really big moments for the Panthers in these playoff signature moments. He's a stud, and you guys are lucky that you now have him for many years to come.
And I can tell you the Forsling praise is all legit. I remember when Patrick Hornquist was here, whenever he used to go over to Forsling's stall, he used to yell, they want to talk to the most handsome man. So he just started yelling the most handsome man. And that was Horny's big thing, which we love. But Emily, we talk about the bright lights and the big stage and what it means for players. But I want to know just for you personally, like I remember just written word Emily Kaplan back in the day. And now here you are, you're on TV, you're there for the Stanley Cup final. You're leaning over, talking to Paul Maurice in these major, massive moments when guys get game-winning goals in the third period. They're talking to you on the bench after the game. Just how special is this for you? And did you ever think like you'd end up here at the Stanley Cup final, on TV in the big stage?
No, I've exceeded all expectations for myself. Like, maybe I could have dreamed of being in a position like this, but it still feels very surreal to me. And therefore, I still just try to keep a grateful mindset and just remember how cool it is and how humbled I am, but also just to enjoy the moment, because not everybody gets to experience what I experience and do the things that I do. I think the thing that humbles me the most is when I'm at the arena, like at Amaranth Bank Arena. I was doing a couple hits in the 100 level before the game, and how many people, young women, always speak to me, but just fans come up and recognize my work. That's really cool. And then when I hear it from people in the game, I also really appreciate that. So I'm just enjoying the ride. I can't believe the amount of places I get to go to, the big events to be a part of, to be as close to the action as possible. So I'm very grateful. Gratitude mindset, something that was really important for me this year. So I'll say it out loud to you guys. I'm grateful and blessed and excited to keep going.
Well, you do a heck of a job all the time. And in addition to that, we all know that covering the playoffs in any capacity, it can be a grind as well. It's by no means you're just on vacation covering the Stanley Cup playoffs. So for you personally, how do you manage the stresses of it, the travel, the grind, all that goes into it, and like the players and coaches, where adrenaline comes into play a lot? How much does adrenaline fuel you two at times?
It certainly fuels me because I have a really hard time falling asleep after games. I know players can attest to that one too. They have a little bit of a better excuse because they're running around hitting each other, and I'm just standing there with my mic, just super excited to watch them. But yeah, it's exhausting. And I think it helps to have a city or a market like South Florida where we stay across the beach and I can just jump in the ocean here and there and call that my mental health break, and, you know, find ways just to get my rest and get my exercise while I can and create some normal routines. But nothing is normal this time of year. It's like, because it's the cup. That's the mantra that everybody lives by. So we go and we catch up on sleep later.
All right, Emily, last one for me. We're getting you out of here on this one. We got to ask, the Panthers will win this series if blank. What do they have to do, you think? What do you think is maybe the X factor that pushes them over the hump?
This is not the sexy answer by any means, but the Panthers will win the series if they do exactly what they did the first 3 rounds. I mean, they've looked fantastic. Again, they're this team with a clear identity. You know what to expect every night. There's very few lapses. And the thing that stood out the most, especially in that Rangers series, is just the way they grind down teams in the third period. They wear them down with their style. There's sometimes, okay, the first period was okay. The second period, they're looking like themselves. No sweat for the third period. Like, they're going to show up. So as long as they keep doing that, it's going to be fits for the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, I know we can't wait to get it going, and we can't wait to see you out at the arena as well. And we'll see you at Media Day, I'm sure, here coming up. So again, we're going to be looking forward to this one getting going on Saturday. Emily Kaplan from ESPN, kind enough to stop by. Emily, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule this week as we get set for the Stanley Cup final to chat with us.
Thank you guys for having me. And then also, as all of this national media attention, international media attention descends on your team, just know that you guys were the ones that have trusted all season long. You do such a great job covering the team. So I appreciate you, and just a little love for you too.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we really appreciate that. It means a lot. It means a lot that you stopped by here today. Territory Talk, as always, presented by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. And again, big thanks to Emily Kaplan for stopping by. Thanks to all of you for tuning in today. For Jamison Olive, I'm Doug Plagans. We will talk to you next time.